Welcome to Headlines. This is David Lichtenstein.
Yeshiva Shalmaila. This week we'll speak about what wasn't much discussed at the Agudah Convention. For the last few weeks, almost every day in, the local papers, particularly the Post, we see two people who dressed up ostensibly like Orthodox Jews, and they're throwing accusations about bribery, prostitution, etc. This week in Business Week, the cover, it's about a loan fund that is, again, many Orthodox Jews in it, and accusations of fraud, etc. So the question is, how do we deal with this? As from Eden, should shuls, communities have guidelines for members? Should we ostracize people for moral or ethical issues, or should we say we have no right to judge? For which issues that direct at Tzibur should we have takanis? Are we considered ourselves ovrei avera or messiah ledvar avera by not ostracizing people or by honoring people? Like, how does your child feel when somebody who is just in the paper for doing something like this, or a Ponzi scheme or a molester, and buys mafta yaina? Does that create a sense of hypocrisy, which Rabbi Horowitz says is one of the leading reasons people go off the derech? Is there an issur of chanifa? Do we have to worry if we do punish somebody? We're not punished. We ostracize the person. Do we have to worry about the repercussions it'll have on his wife or children? And here's a question. How come when these accusations, or rather when convictions or etc. happen, is there an obligation on the Rabbanim, or as us as a community, to react publicly to the media? Should we try to play defense and hide, or make believe it's nothing? Or should we condemn it and say these are not the behaviors that the Torah, that Shulchan Aruch allows, and therefore they're not part of our community anymore? Or the quote David Greenfield that he said by Agudah, we should throw the bums out. How should we react? That is the debate that we will be having. We have a number. We went to 3 continents, and we have guests from 4 countries and 3 continents. We have from Hendon, England, Rav Dovid Tugendhaft. From Brooklyn, we have David Greenfield. From Gush Etzion, we have Rav Shmuel Cherlow. From Baltimore, Maryland, Rabbi Weiss. And we will have a short clip from Athens, Greece, Rav Mendel. We've spoken about this topic more than one time, about, the Meitzer Harabim that the Shulchan Aruch brings in Choshen Mishpat Shin Peches. And it's a question I ask you. If you have people who are Mechal Shem Shamayim, and they embarrass the Fruma community, but they don't just embarrass them. Here's what I want to question you. Do they endanger them? Do you think maybe a Yid someplace in a beard and payas or with a yarmulke is going to get beaten up because the image of the Erlicha person, of the Orthodox, has been debased? When you see Yidden, going to do bribery, and you see these, officials and driving around in Santa Claus outfits and flying with prostitutes, does it say, well, we just despise you, we look down on you? Do they rise to the level of a Meitzer Harabim? And it's a question. I don't know the answer. If you come into a bank and you want to do a business deal, and they look at you and you're wearing a yarmulke, you have a beard and pace, and they say, and I've heard this from a banker, he said, when I see somebody who looks like that, I say quietly, we're not dealing with that person. Does it rise to the level of a Meitzer Harabim? Question I put to you. Much more than just a Chil Hashem. So we're going to air a few clips from a show we did on 12/11/17, where we had Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky, Rav Hershel Shechter, Rav Nissan Kaplan. If you want a more halachic analysis, you want to go really into the halacha, the rishonim, etc. So posted a shir online 12/31/16, a shir that I gave in the Bais Medrash of North Woodmere on this topic, in the Shul of Rabbi Leibowitz, and that's really rishonim, achronim, paiskim, etc. Much more than we were able to accomplish here with our guests. Before we go to our program, I just want to start with something really positive. Last week there was a story in the news, El Al Flight 002. It was delayed for 5 hours on Thursday because of the snowstorm, and it couldn't get to Tel Aviv in time for Shabbos, so it landed in Athens, Greece. And on a few hours' notice, What do you do when you're landing in some foreign country? What does everybody do? They call the maitre d', the Eshel of Klal Yisrael, which is the Chabad Shluchim. They called up the Chabad Shliach of Greece and his wife, Rabbi Mendel, and his wife Nechama, and they said there's 150 people coming for Shabbos. We're going to be there in a few hours, and we need food. There are no kosher supermarkets. There's no pomegranate. There's no ShopRite. There's no Schick's Bakery. There's nothing. So here we're going to have a 1 minute, 2 minutes of Reb Mendel. How did your wife cook for 150 people on 4 hours' notice? Here's our interview with Reb Mendel. We have on the phone with us from Athens, Greece, Rabbi Mendel, who's the shliach to Athens. Welcome, Reb Mendel.
Hi.
So we understand last week, the El Al flight 002 left Thursday night very late. Couldn't make it to Shabbos, Teretz Yisrael, to Tel Aviv in time, so they landed in Athens right before Shabbos. They put them in a hotel near the airport, and you, on a few hours' notice, created a Shabbos with candles and fish and challah and chicken and cholent for 150 people. Is that correct?
Yes. We found out just a few hours before Shabbos, and we had to get ready to have what.
So how did you do that? How does a young man and a young woman, a rebbitzin, and a few hours' notice, how do you make food? And I imagine there's no big kosher supermarkets in Athens?
No, not yet.
Any bakeries? Do they have Schick's Bakery in Athens?
No.
Bakery, no? So
you have to bake everything yourself if you want. So, yeah, but it was very intense, but the Shabbos itself was really beautiful. I mean, it was such a special atmosphere of unity, of different people, from different backgrounds, and everybody together, just, keeping Shabbos, celebrating the Shabbos together. It was a very special atmosphere and songs and happiness and joy. Part of it was also because people came and they didn't know what they were expecting. They didn't know what they're going to eat on Shabbos, what will happen, and then suddenly they have such a wonderful Shabbos and something much beyond of whatever they could expect. So there was special joy during the Shabbos.
So let me ask you a question. Do you think that there's something amazing that you're from Yavan, which is, we're coming to Hanukkah, this week is going to be Hanukkah, and in Yavan, where they wanted to destroy the whole Torah, and they wanted to destroy any Emunah, Shabbos, one of the things that the Yavanim wanted to be mevatel was Chodesh, Mila, and Shabbos, that in the land of Yavan, 2,500 years later, a huge group of Yidden are celebrating Shabbos. Isn't that an amazing story?
Indeed. It's, everything is b'hashgacha pratit, so it was very special to have this Shabbos here in Athens.
Well, thank you very much, and it's an inspiration to all of us on the Haknesses and on the Ahavas Yisroel, befrat the Ahavas Yisroel, in a time when there's so much machlekes in the world, to see people embracing any Yid of any background, of any color, of any texture, without any asking for nothing, charging nothing. It's really an inspiration for all of us. Thank you very much, Reb Mendel.
Thank you.
Kultiv. So I have to admit to you that's quite intimidating, and it's this couple. It's a little bit like a farmer rolls an ostrich egg into the hen house, and he says, "Ladies, this is what the competition is doing." It's quite amazing what they'll do on such short notice, and it's just a tribute to the Ahavas Yisroel that Chabad and many Yidden have. Amazing story. So let me say a word before we go to our program. This week is Hanukkah. The Gemara in Shabbos and Daf Chaf Aleph says that Kishenichnusu Yavanim lehechal. By the way, we just had from Yavan, we had Reb Mendel. It says Timu kol hashmanim. They matama the oils. Ukishagavra malchus beis chashmenai. What did they do? Listen to the Lashon. Badku. They did a bedika. V'lei matzu el pach echad shel shemen. B'chaysame shel kain gadol anasa b'nes. They found a pach shemen, a little casket of oil that had the chasima, it had the imprintur of the kain gadol on it, and they lit with it. So here's something interesting. And what do we do? Klal Yisrael do every year. we take a pach shemen and we light. But I think there's a magical metaphor here. What is that? In the darkness, Hanukkah is the darkest time of the year. In fact, the Maral famously says that the end of Hanukkah always coincides when the days start getting longer, back into the light. What do we do when it gets really dark? We look for a pach shemen toyer. And what does that mean? In ourselves, sometimes, life gets pretty dark. It could be with our relationships. It could be in business. It could be, in so many other areas of our life, our personal feelings, etc. Life gets dark. But there's a pach shemen, there's a oir hagonas in every single Jew. And that if we find that spark, that pure spark that is unadulterated, that is not covered with soot, that hasn't been buried under aggravation, and we can find it, we could ignite it, something magical could happen. It could burn for far longer than it should. But here's another time when we do a search. It says, Badku, right? V'leimatzu ela pach shemen. When is another time we do Badika? Another time we do Badika is by Badikas Chametz. And here, it's the exact opposite. Here we're looking for something wonderful to light, and there we're looking for something wonderful to destroy, to burn, beer Chametz. What's the shot in that? Why do we have these two opposites? So I saw among many of the Sfarim, here's a machshava. There is a shaychus between Badikas Chametz and to Chanukah, or at least to Nissan and Chanukah on many levels. For example, the Ramah in Tafrei Shayin Bais in Hilchos Chanukah says that there's a mitzvah to make a ribui suda on Chanukah. Why? Because the days of Chanukah were the days of Chanukas HaMizbeach. And the Lavush and many of the other Achrayim, the Magen Avram actually says it's based on a Medrash. It says the Rosh Lavush, I believe, is a Kabbalah here, or a Messiah B'Yadenu, that the Mishkan was finished Chafei Kislev, but they only erected it Shalei Bizmanei when in the beginning of Nissan. So we see some type of a connection. There are many others in Halacha. For example, it says that a woman is allowed to say Hallel on two holidays, as many Paiskim. When is it? Pesach and Chanukah is Zman, again Pesach and Chanukah. I'll not mention a number of other ones. So what's the pshat? There are two searches we have in our life. And these are two searches that a Yid should always be having. One is for the pach shemen toyer that is always inside of him. And what does that mean? Marriage could sometimes become difficult. Raising children could get sometimes difficult. Getting along with parents could be sometimes difficult. But isn't it true that inside every one of us, someplace deep, 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 there could be buried an image of, that little perfect little house with the white picket fence and daffodils growing in the front? We have someplace inside of us that image. But what happens? Life gets in the way. It could be the husband or the wife. They work very hard. They come home late. We say the wrong things. We snap to our spouses, to our children. We get disappointed in our people we love. Maybe our parents. What does it say? V'heishav levaves. Eliyahu is going to do that one day at the end of time. But there is that spark. We could remember that vision. Rav Palm Zechariah Levracha, when a couple would come for marriage counseling, he would say often, bring your wedding album. And in the middle, he would start looking through it when they were happy. Can we go back to that space? So what does that mean? Find that pach shemen toyer where you still believed that you could have that wonderful relationship, where you felt that at work or with chavrusa, could we reignite that? Could we take off some of the rust? Could we use some rust-oleum? That's one dream. That's one candle that a Yid always has to light. And what's the other candle that a person has to light? The other bedika? Vaychapes bagadol bakatan. Next week's parsha. And what does it say? What's the search for chametz? Chipus b'neiros. What are we looking for? We're looking for chametz. What does chametz represent? It's that overriding need to satisfy others. Did my children do the right shidduchim? Am I proud? Do I have the right shtella or the right job? Have I been as successful as other people, as my neighbors, or as I would like to be? Am I able, what does chimutz mean? That area where our ego just drives everything in our life, sending our kids to schools they don't belong, disappointment in children who aren't exactly the way a parent would want it to be, or disappointment in a parent who could disappoint us, in a spouse who disappoints us because of expectations to please others, because of the sense of pride and ego that's unfettered. If we could remember these two things, light the candle, light the pach shemen, reawaken your dreams, and on the other hand, be mevayer those feelings of keeping up with the Joneses, give a shpaya, and I don't need you anymore on that chametz. With those two, we're zeicher to the Oyer of Chanukah, and then ultimately to the Oyer of Pesach. You know, the holy Raanana, Mendel Raanana was famous. He didn't say much in his life, but what he did say was often very profound. They say that there was once, they had in Poland, there was a big chasana, so they came, the Raanana came, and the Chayzer came, the two biggest rabbis of Poland, and in one, by the Chayzer, it was always besimcha, there was shrieking and dancing, and by the Raanana, he sat for 3 hours by a tish, he didn't say a word, he didn't say a single word. He would say, at the end, he would say a sentence. You know what the Raanana said? And many Hasidim do that today. He said, take the leftover oil from your Chanukah menorah and the leftover psilis and use it to ignite the bonfire of Bir Chametz. And many Hasidim, till today, many holy Hasidim, they take the leftover oil and the psilis and they use it to start it. And how do I understand it? If we can ignite and find our pach shemen, if we could find something in our soul that still believes in the beauty of who we are, of our relationships, of who we love, and the value, we could find our own goods, we could believe in ourselves again, we could then use that to light the fire that burns, that destroys that need, the chametz, the ego, to satisfy, to keep up, etc. Those two things, the side of simcha. Let's go to the riddle of the week. The Ramah in our HaChaim Kuf Pezayin and here in Chanukah Tafresh Pebez says, what happened if you forgot Al Anisim? Remember, you don't say Al Anisim the whole year, it's only a few days. It's very easy to forget. But wait. He says there's an answer. What should you do? You should make a bracha by the Yerachaman. Harachaman hu yasa lanu nisim. That's what the Ramah says. God, may the Rabbi Shalom make miracles for us. The problem is, the Gemara in Brachas and Daf Samach says, if a person's wife is expecting, and he desperately wants a boy, and he says, he ratzin that my wife, Sheishti, should give birth, tell the Zachar, should it be a boy? The Gemara says, it's a brachal of Atala. The Gemara says, I by Leah did it. She says, that's a nes, and we are not mispal for miracles. He says, that's not, we don't daven for nisim. So the question is, if the Gemara in Bracha says we don't daven for nisim, how could the Ramah say, if you forgot Al Nisim, you should make a harachaman hu yasa lanu nisim? That is the riddle for Chanukah. Let's go to our wonderful guests.
We have the honor of having with us on the phone from London, Rav Dovid Tugendhaft. He's like me, he's a Talmud of the Mir Yeshiva, he's a musmach for Nassan Sfi, one of the few people in the world who has that honor. He's the Rav of Nishmas Yisroel in London. Welcome, Rav Dovid.
Thank you so much. It's a great privilege to be on your program in this Yeshiva Shalmala.
Thank you. So, Rav Dovid, here's the question we're discussing. We, in the United States in particular, but unfortunately every community has this, we have 99% of people who are Yerei Shemayim, and for the most part, I'm Mekadesh Shem Shemayim with their Anhaga, and then we have a very small minority. I'm going to say 1%, okay, just for the purposes, or maybe even a fraction of a percent, who, and it is a fraction of a percent, who flagrantly violate the Mechal Shem Shemayim. They could be Ponzi schemers, molesters. Look, there's Taryag mitzvahs. There's in infinite ways to be Mechal Shem Shemayim. And the question is, first question is, so what we want to do is, how do we deal with these people? And the first question I would like to put to you is, have you had experience with such a situation? And if so, does it indeed damage a community when we see a flagrant violator of halacha or a flagrant moral violator, etc. Machal Shem Shemayim, get a shishi, get a shlishi, get mafta yaina. So what's your experience, and does it in effect, should it be something we're concerned about and be speaking about, creating a dialogue about, or do you say nobody cares, it doesn't matter?
So firstly, I think this is one of the greatest difficulties that a Rav encounters. Someone goes into Rabbonos because their goal is to teach Torah and to be marbek beit shomayim, to do chesed, to welcome people. And here often the Rav has to go against his own grain and to exercise midas hadin, because one has to be careful. If one is merachem on the wrong person, there can be very serious consequences. I think to address your question directly, we can make a chiluk between a roidef, a mazik, and a Batya. Let's start off with a roidef. When in one of my previous kehillas, I had a very difficult situation. A man came into shul one morning, and people told me after shul that this person had just come out of prison where he'd been for a number of years because he was guilty of child molestation. And it was in the newspapers here, and he came into my shul. So this was a huge dilemma, and I called this person in to speak to him, and he said, listen, Rabbi, I've served my time. I want to turn over a new leaf. I've served my time, so, let me into your shul. So, and it was very compelling. On the other hand, we, on the few occasions that he came initially, we saw him outside during Kriyas HaTorah speaking to the children. So what do you do with somebody like this?
That's very problematic.
So I was a young Rav, and I didn't know what on earth to do in the situation. So I called up Moreinu Rav Rebbe Moshe Shapira, and I asked him for answers.
By the way, Rabbi Moshe Shapiro spent 2 of his last Shabbosim of his life in America in my house. We had the great honor. I can say I was very close to him. He was very beloved, and the last two of the last 3 Shabbosim in America that he spent in his life, he spent at my house. And the last shiur he gave in his life was while he was staying by me. He gave a shiur in the shul. Both Shabbosim he gave shiurim in shul. So it was quite a so. I'm just reaching out my hand to you over over the pond. Yeah, continue your stories. What did Rav Moshe say?
He said that this person has to fulfill 2 conditions, and then we can allow him into the shul. Only if he fulfills these 2. Number 1, he has to be meidiyah and tell people and publicly announce that this is something which he has had struggled with. And number 2, I have to be in constant contact with ongoing therapists to liaise with him and to check that he is, in fact, progressing in a positive way. Now, of course, when I gave over these 2 conditions to him, unfortunately, he did not want to fulfill these conditions.
Very good. So Rav Moshe basically said, listen, Rav Moshe said, look, if a person taka was masakin drachav and he did tshuva and he could evidence it with a big E, so it's not our job to be noikim or noiter. We're just supposed to protect the community. So he said he did his time, but the person obviously refused to show that he did do real tshuva. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. In fact, the epilogue was that he tried to run me over subsequently, which was obviously quite a shock. Baruch Hashem, we're still here to tell the tale. But yeah, this is an example of somebody.
Powerful. So all the Rabbanim listening, you have a molester. If he did tshuva, he served time, and then he agrees to see a therapist and never to speak to children. Or Moshe said he's allowed back into the shul.
He didn't say that. He said 2 things. Number 1, he has to be meidiyah publicly that this was an issue that he has struggled with, and number 2, that the Rav has to be in constant contact with his ongoing therapist.
But he's not allowed to speak to children either. Didn't you say that?
He didn't make that condition, but I agree with you that would be a very important thing to ensure. Certainly, he shouldn't be somebody who's hanging around. If he's one of the people who's hanging around in the corridors and in the side rooms, then definitely he shouldn't be allowed in. So that would be someone who's essentially a roideif or a sofek roideif. We have to absolutely protect the primary people who we're entrusted with, which is our kehillah. Then the next category would be someone who's a mazik, someone who has victims. So that could be some sort of a con artist, a confidence trickster, We had a situation once where a person came to a shul, a shul that I was Rav in, and he pretended he was from the Mossad, and he was speaking to lots of people and trying to gain their confidence and ultimately trying to get money out of them. So, of course, in a situation like this, the Rav has to look into things as much as possible. And this is a case where Lashon Hara L'Toyeles is needed to warn people. And certainly a conversation with such a person, if there's a danger that he is a current mazik, then of course, one would have to tell him that he has no right to be there. If right now being a mazik b'yodayim, he's making a hole in the boat, then he shouldn't be allowed. What happens though if he was a mazik? He's somebody who did run, let's say, a Ponzi scheme. He is somebody who owes people money. Should such a person still be allowed? Should such a person be allowed back into the shul? So this is very interesting. There's actually in Hilchos Brachos in Siman Nun Hey in Sifyud Bais, the Shulchan Aruch speaks about a menuda. A menuda ein mitztarfen oisei lechol dava shetzarech asara, avul mutar lispal beis Haknesses shusham, elim kein perishu lahachmer elov bakach. And the Bir Halacha over here, he brings out, he speaks out that if someone is menuda b'shvil momoin, so then, technically speaking, mutar litztaref imei lechol dava shebekdusha. He brings a machlekes here, but it comes out such a person, they technically are allowed into shul, and ela im ken pirshu lahachmer elov bakach, which is that if the kehillah, when they were menada him, they put this as one of the terms and conditions. We just, we can't have you over here. So then it would be acceptable to ostracize such a person. And, often where there is a person who has victims, so when he comes to shul, it's just very upsetting for everybody. And I saw there's a very interesting Bir Halacha, another Bir Halacha over there in Nun Hey, where he brings a fascinating Prima Godim. The Prima Godim says that there are certain people who cannot be mitzaref to a minyan, but can be mitzaref for Megillah. And the Bir Halacha brings this Prima Godim in the halachas of Cherem in Siman Shin Lamed Daled, that the Eish Lavram says over there that the reason that for a Dova Kedusha...
Shin Lamed Daled is we're talking about now in Yoreh Deah, just for audience.
Yeah. That he says for a Dova Shebekdusha we need 10 because you need the people to be Ba'agudah Achas. And someone who's in Nidoy, who Richuk, Ein HaMenuda Mitzaref, that in order for that to be an appropriate tefillah, it has to be that Agudah Achas. But he says, for Kriyas Megillah, you don't need it for a Dova Kedusha to be Agudah Achas, you just need Pirsum Anes. So the Menuda can be included in this Asora, Shemisparsam Anes Bifneim. So you see over here that when it comes to tefillah, it has to be Agudah Achas. People should feel that all the people here, that it's acceptable to them, and if there are people who have victims, then if we allow them to come into the shul, and especially if they haven't apologized to the people, and it causes a bad feeling, then it's very hard to say it's Agudah Achas. I'm just using a precedent. It's not exactly the same, but the precedent of this halacha of a menuda, that he can be mitzaref to a minyan. He could be there, but it depends on the feeling of the tzibur as to whether to have him around. Of course, the Rav has to be a mensch, and he has to maybe help them personally, but if there are actual victims over there, then there is such a precedent that they shouldn't be allowed to be part of a kehillah.
Right, because you're saying, according to the Prima Godim, it stells in the Agudah Achas. It's destructive to the sense of community when there's somebody in the community who has hurt others in that same group.
Absolutely. On the other hand, if someone is not a Reidif, they're not a Mazik, but they're just an Avarian.
So but let me go back, because in Mazik it's a very broad, Reidif we clearly understand. We don't want a child molested, even though, believe it or not, there's a shul in Flatbush, and I had a guest by me last Shabbos. I have a lot of boys come, people listen, they ask me if they could come, and he said he davens in a shul, in a Vasikin minyan, where one of the most famous molesters who made it on all the covers, New York Magazine, New Yorker, Post, and this guy's a Levi, and he says very often they give him the Aliyah to Levi. And he says he can't understand how somebody who supposedly molested dozens of children can get an Aliyah in shul. Now, this person today is already older and is not a roidif anymore, but it would certainly fall into this category of somebody who was mazik to tzibur. So here's my question. Besides the Agudah Achas, do you believe that it does any damage when people look at this and they say, les din v'les dayan, you could do whatever you want, they're still going to give you an aliyah in shul. And sometimes you could have a wealthy person, he could do whatever he wants, and he writes a $10,000 check. I'll share with you a story. It's a joke, but unfortunately it's very poignant. This fellow comes to a shul, to a Rav, and he tells him, Rabbi, I want to bury my dog. He was part of the family. Lucky, we called him Lucky Lifshitz. He was mamish part of the Lifshitz family. Could we bury him? So the rabbi says, I'm sorry, in our cemetery we don't take dogs. Please, he was literally one of my kids. No. So he leaves. He says, okay, Rabbi, but I'm going to bury him because the conservative rabbi said, knowing that I'm donating $100,000, he said, sure, you're welcome to bury him in our cemetery. So the rabbi turns around and he says, really? You never told me your dog was a Shema Torah mitzvah before? Right? So this is the joke, but unfortunately sometimes the dog is a human. And it's somebody who has done Kreit Hezek, and he writes a check. He bought Mafta Yaina for $5,000. What is anybody going to do? Do you believe that damages and that creates a sense of hypocrisy that children look at? And I believe we had Rabbi Horowitz on. He says that the number one reason after molestation why kids go off the derech is hypocrisy. Do you believe that creates a sense of hypocrisy, that basically religion and morality are for sale?
Unfortunately, absolutely, I do. Agree with that. I think there's a big difference to allowing somebody to sit in the shul with the talis over his head held in shame, at the back of the shul in some corner somewhere, and to allow him to come. If he, everybody has the opportunity to do teshuvah. Rabbi Elazar ben Dordaya, we know, is the Rebbe of teshuvah. Everybody has the opportunity to do teshuvah. To allow him to come and to keep a low profile is one thing. But if a person wants to take public role in the kehillah, whether it's something that they have achrayus for, or whether it's something where they're buying kovads or they're receiving kovads, then it's a terrible, terrible message of hypocrisy. We're supposed to be role models for our children, and I think that to allow somebody to do that is very, very schwer.
Let me ask you just an addendum to what you're saying. You're saying that we see from the Lezer Baal Kol Zayna Shabailam, the Gemara says about him. He certainly was a really bad guy, and he was Rebbe Lezer. He died as a Rebbe, right? So my question to you is, do tshuva. Am bein adam lechaverei. Could somebody say, hey, yeah, I did tshuva? Well, none of your victims, you didn't approach them. You didn't approach them multiple times. You didn't approach them with a minion. What do you mean you did tshuva? You did tshuva. Can you do tshuva beinach u'bein atzmech when you damaged, you stole, you molested? I was in a shul. I have an Adam, he learns in Eretz Yisrael. I went to shul, and who's there? The butcher from Muncie. He served tarfas to the town for 10 to 20 years, and I don't think there's kamat ein Bais, ein shameis, because if you ever went to a wedding or this or that, inevitably, and this person, he gets an aliyah in shul. So I said, this guy's fed me tarfas personally. I'm sure I went to a wedding. I go to 2 weddings a year, but I'm sure in one of them I could have eaten something of his. So they said, oh, he did tshuva. I said, he did tshuva. Did he take out ads in the paper asking people? Did he come to Muncie for a month and knock door to door? To do tshuva, to be Michael people tarfis. The famous story in the times of the Megal Lamukas, he said they had to go into Gullus for 10 years. This guy moved to Muncie, at Pachtach, after Boich, he gets Elias, he lanes for the Torah. Can you do tshuva on where you damaged other people by saying al chetz?
Right. So on the one hand, there's al todin es chavercha, and there's we have to be don lekav zechus, but that has nothing to do with things over here, because maybe between him and HaKadosh Baruch Hu, on the aspect of the ben adam l'makom, he's done tshuva, but it's meforish. A person has to, whether I don't want to speak about that case in particular, but such a person, have they put adverts out to apologize? What have they done to try and right the wrong that they've done? And if they haven't done that, then it's very, very schwer to give such a person aliyah. It's maforish. A person has to be mafias the person that they wronged. So again, we don't judge the person, but in terms of trying to give such a person privileges, especially public privileges, that would be very, very difficult to say.
So, Reb Dovid, why do you think our Rabbanim do it b'mesiras nefesh? They're tzaddikim, they're erlich, they live for the most part under difficult financial conditions, and they're avodim la'avdei Hashem. That's how I define Rabbanim. They're tzaddikim, they're avodim they have great mesiras nefesh to serve the community, and they do it at great cost to themselves, to their family. They could live much better lives. So why do these avodim la'avdei Hashem and these tzaddikim, why do we find them so recalcitrant, so really almost not oimid ala mishmar when it comes to, throwing the bums at a show?
So, of course, it's difficult to generalize, and each case needs to be looked at independently. Each kehillah needs to be looked at independently, and I don't want to chas v'sholem undermine the hard work of any of the Rabbonim. But I think maybe it goes back to what I said at the beginning, that a Rov, hopefully, is somebody who, his goal is to teach Torah and to do chesed, and to be a merachim. And if a person has come to him and they've really tried to show how they're trying to change their lives around, then it might be the nature of certain people to be merachim on them. However, what we're saying is kol merachim ala hachzorim lebasef misachsa ala rachmonim, that sometimes the object of our rachmonis can end up causing greater damage.
Here's a lashon of the Chacham Tzvi. It's in Siman Lamed Ches. It's oft quoted. And he writes, Mibnei Ameinu ha'osim ma'isa asher lo ya'asa b'Yisroel. Those they do bad actions. Ve'ein roi lahaskira mipnei hakav. He doesn't even want to mention it, right? So he writes like this, Im helem ya'alimu eineim, people who turn the other way, gadol avayna milansai. It's a great sin. Too great, right? He says, Ve'echitachin sheyala likreis b'tayra b'tzibur. How could somebody like this get an aliyah? V'haloi elecha chilul Hashem v'kibui m'oyer hadas gadol mizeh. He says, there is no greater, v'kol ha'oimid v'nimtza sham ba'oise perek, whoever stands there, u'ba'oise makayim, v'einay moicha, and he doesn't say a word, right? Yilokeid ba'avaynai v'chatasa yitamech. He says, just standing by is a type of approval. It's a type of you're being complicit. Klal Yisrael doesn't believe in the Kitty Genovese story where bystanders are innocent. We believe that we're Amecher, and the people who could be damaged by seeing this, and where they say, like again, that's his sense of hypocrisy. Les dinvel as dying. What's his lashon? He says, Gadol avayne milansai. It's a strong lashon for the Chacham Tzvi, wouldn't you say?
Yes. Yeah, a very rare lashon. We don't find that lashon used very often at all. Gadol avayne milansai. Let
me suggest, we were sitting by the table, we were discussing this, and my Bnei Bais had a very interesting thought as to why we don't react to this. And she said that the Klal Yisrael has been so, we are near Dafim, like the Rambam writes in Hilchos when he talks about Geirus, he says we're near Dafim, we're Ma'usim, we're Sanuim Beina Umais. So we've created a tremendous sense of family, right? There was an amazing case this week. There was an El Al plane last week that landed close to Shabbos. They had to land in Athens. And there's a Chabad Shliach and his wife in Athens. They were called at 11 o'clock that there's 200 people landing there at 4 o'clock, Mamish for Shabbos.
Incredible.
So this lady baked 200 challahs. She made kugel, shal, and fish for 200 people. She never saw again. Right, this couldn't happen by the Irish, right? It's an astonishing story. So my wife said, we are created with such a sense of community and such a sense of family that the thought of would somebody do this to their child, that we almost love each other like family, and therefore it's a chait. If this is a chait, like the Chacham Tzvi comes, it's a chait that comes from roimimus, not from shiflus. What do you think of this concept?
Yeah, it's a beautiful limud zuchus. It's a beautiful limud zuchus. It has ramifications on the children, as you say, in terms of who they're looking up to and who are the role models. It's a beautiful limud zuchus. You know, there is another precedent to giving aliyah to such people.
What is that?
In Hilchas Kriyas HaTorah, in Siman Kuf Lamed Tes, so the Mishnah Berurah says if someone is choshed al arayos,
yeah, that he says you can.
We suspect that he was over, then you shouldn't give him an aliyah because he'll be embarrassed. But the Eli Rabbah says, b'shem the Knesset HaGedolah, that if you know that he did an aveira and he hasn't done tshuva, then you should call him up for that aliyah, because she is bayish b'dovar.
Right, he says, except for Parshas Arayos, he says you shouldn't. I believe,
Right, so he says that even Parshas Arayos, if you can actually get him to be mizvayish, if you can get him to do tshuva, I suppose the goal would be, we want everybody to do tshuva. It just has to be that this is a real meaningful tshuva, and it's a public tshuva.
But Rabbi Dovid, I think, would you agree that there's a difference between a person who does Averis, and I think that it goes on most of us. Can't speak to you, but I certainly have done Averis in my life, right? And I think that there's a difference between somebody who's done Averis, wherein somebody who's either been a Meitzer Harabim, somebody who's created a very loud Chil Hashem. I think if you call somebody who is Nichshel and Aveira up, nobody looks. They say, oh, it's a human being. Right, only Dalad Meisei B'Itei Shel Nachash. Then we have to draw a bright line between somebody who does an Averis, somebody who's, for most of these Freya Tinnik Shenishma, if it's a Frumma guy, he was Nichshal, between somebody who embarrassed the community publicly, who's had an impact, who children will say how. I think there's a line there. Would you agree?
Yes. I think that, like most people, like the Rambam says in Torah Biak Bais, that's you'll always find colorful characters in the shul, and Chachamim say, there'll always be people in the shul who are like this. But if it comes that it shares this feeling of Agudah Achas, and it's something, like I say, where there are major victims and where it made a nasty taste for the whole tzibur. So then it's very, very schwer. They should, certainly to take part, to humbly be there, but to be given kibudim is they have to bring a raya for that. People who allow that to happen.
Rabbi Sai, we have the honor. This was Reb David Tugendhaft from the Rav in Hendon, England, of Nishmas Yisroel, a Musmach, one of the three Musmach of Reb Nosson Tzvi of the great Rosh of the Mir. Thank you very much for joining us.
Gedolim, and continued hatzlachas, siyata d'shmaya, and all of your wonderful work.
Amen, Kolton. We have the honor of having with us on the phone from New York City, David Greenfield, who used to be a councilman for New York City. He was actually the head of the real estate zoning committee. He's the current CEO of the Met Council, which is the largest charitable organization in New York City. He's a Talmud of Tarvadas, Turo, Georgetown Law. He worked for Joe Lieberman. He's a Talmud in Eretz Yisrael of Migdash Melech and the Mir. Welcome, David.
Thank you so much. I'm a big fan of the program. It's really exciting for me to be on as a guest.
Thank you. So, David, what we want to speak about is a 2 or 3 minute blurb that was on the internet, something that happened at the Agudah Convention, which I think it's important because it's what we're not discussing in public. So could you give us just a little bit recap what happened and then allow me to ask you some questions?
Sure. First I just have to say I'm always fascinated by what ends up going viral right on the internet. A few years ago I gave a speech on the floor of the New York City Council about anti-Semitism when we were being protested by pro-Palestinian and anti-Israel protesters while we were commemorating the Holocaust, and that speech went viral. And similarly, there were maybe 100 people in the room at the Agudah Convention when I was speaking on a leadership panel about, and the question that I was asked by the moderator, which was Rabbi Avi Schnall, was a question of how do we deal with the media bias against the Frum community. And I answered the question, and someone was recording it, and then, of course, it went viral as well. So it's just one of those fascinating quirks of the Internet and Twitter and Facebook and WhatsApp and how things actually spread, and we've gotten a huge reaction. And I'm happy that we got a huge reaction because it was certainly meant to be focused on our community and to have that conversation. So the question in terms of how do we deal with the media bias, to me is a question that's a very complicated question, but really has two components to it, which is that the first component, which I explained, was that there is no question that there is a real media bias against people in the frum community. And the point that I was making, which is important, is that it's not necessarily anti-Semitism, right? We have to distinguish between bias and anti-Semitism. There are some in the media who are anti-Semitic, just as, quite frankly, there are some in just about every industry that are anti-Semitic, and there's no question that we're seeing an increase in anti-Semitism across the United States of America. That's a fact. We've seen that over the last few years. The question over here is a question of media bias. What we have to understand is that many communities experience bias. And my explanation was that the Muslim community, for example, sees bias against them in the media all the time, just as how the African American community deals with it. And so you have to separate anti-Semitism versus bias. And there's no question that there is bias against the frum community. And there's certain satisfaction that media outlets get by splashing a photo of someone who is very obviously Orthodox on the front page and saying, look, basically, without actually saying it, they're accusing that individual and really the community as a whole of hypocrisy, right? Which is you claim to lead your life a certain way as Orthodox Torah observant Jews, and you say, look, we want to live our lives, don't bother us, we're living a pure and holy life. And then at the same time, and they're trying to indict the community, which is not fair, but it's really this one individual, you engage in activity that was illegal, unethical, immoral, in some cases, unfortunately, all three, and that's why you on the front page. And my point was that we have to separate between the times when, in fact, that's always inappropriate, obviously, and that's always media bias. We have to separate from the times that when it happened to an individual who was murdered and ended up on the front page of the New York Post and legitimately did nothing wrong, and the Post just mocked him for being dead, and that's clearly bias, and I would even argue borders on anti-Semitism, versus when someone actually engages in an action from the community that is illegal, unethical, immoral, and creates a massive chil Hashem, and that person ends up on the front page, it's not really fair for us to say, well, why is the media covering that? And the solution to that problem is not just pushing back, which of course we have to do, but is also recognizing that we are part of the problem when those very people then get honored in our shuls and at our dinners and at our yeshivas, just because, to be blunt, they have a few bucks. And I think that the average person recognizes that. And to be fair, I've gotten a lot of pushback and a lot of criticism, but equally, I've gotten, I would say, even more people, especially privately, Rabbanim and community leaders, saying, I agree with you 100%, but what do you want me to do with it? And I'm glad that you spoke out about this instead of me, because I didn't want to be the carbon who would speak about this. And my point is, let's have a conversation. We have to plant the seeds of the conversation to recognize that this behavior and this twofold behavior, one is that people who are engaging in this unethical, illegal, immoral behavior, who are creating a chil Hashem because they violated a whole host of halachas, and let's be clear, they violated our Torah and our hashkafa, they're hurting our community as a whole. But there's a second avla, which is that when community leaders, so-called community leaders, decide, the gabbai or the Rav of a shul or the fundraiser in the yeshiva says, I'm going to honor this guy because for $250,000 I'll give him an honor, so I will clean his reputation. But now you're hurting the reputation of Klal Yisrael when your yeshiva decides to honor him, or when in the shul you decide to give him shishi or allow him to buy Master Yana simply because he has a few bucks. Because the media looks at that and says, folks, you're not being honest. Because if you were honest, that person who engages in harm behavior, who ran a Ponzi scheme, or who defrauded the government, or who was a child molester, if you're allowing him to participate in your community, then that reflects on you as a community, that in fact, that you have a tolerance, and not just a tolerance, but acceptance for this behavior. And I'll give you one actual case in point. I recently had lunch with a Congress member, and as I was having lunch with a Congress member, the Congress member asked me and said, I have to ask you a question, David. I was invited to a dinner in a few weeks from now, and I looked at the honorees, and one of the honorees, I think, is somebody who a few years ago was actually convicted of a major fraud. Is that possible? Or maybe it's just that last name is a very familiar name in the community. And I looked into it, and I was embarrassed, and that, in fact, was the case. And so here you have a member of the United States Congress, right, one of a select 435 people in the House of Representatives in the United States of America, basically, who's not Jewish, saying, what are you doing? You want me to come to a dinner where you're honoring a convicted felon? And I didn't have an answer to that.
So you're saying it hurts our public image. Does it hurt us internally? Like, I guess on the public image, let's talk about that because that's your area of expertise. Give me a few more examples how you say it hurts our public image. Right now, there's a case going on in New York. It's been in the Post, off and on almost every day for the last 2 weeks, where one, I don't want to say frum person, but somebody who's dressed up in a Purim outfit like a frum person is basically testifying against another person who's dressed up for Purim like a frum person. How does that effect hurt us? Does it affect us the way the guy? It's just two Jews fighting. Like, does it affect me, David Lichtenstein? Does it affect Kiruv? Like, how does it hurt us? Walk me through that. You deal for the last 15 or 20 years.
Yeah.
You've been one of those that are Malbush Big Day Esav, and you go into the land of Edom and you deal with them. So bring us some facts from the battlefield. Does it indeed hurt us? And they say, look, just like you have if a Finnegan shoots a McDonald, nobody says it's hurting the Irish. Does this really hurt us or not?
I want to tell you two interesting facts. The first is that 22 years ago, when I worked on Capitol Hill for Senator Joe Lieberman, I was the only guy on Capitol Hill at the time who was wearing a yarmulke. And that's pretty significant. And by the way, there's all sorts of heterim not to wear yarmulkes. It's not a criticism, chas v'shalom, of anybody else, but the reality is that I was, at the time, the only yarmulke-wearing staffer, and I worked for Senator Joe Lieberman, and that mattered because people looked at you and they knew you were a firm guy with the yarmulke. And we can spend the whole show just telling you the kinds of reactions that I got from staffers from South Carolina who didn't understand what it was, the guy who wore a yarmulke. But that's not for this show. But that's the first interesting fact. So I certainly am someone who's very proud of my Judaism. And for those people who follow me know that I actually got attacked and almost got injured when I was in Ramallah on a official U.S. delegation because I was wearing a yarmulke, and the American government demanded I take off my yarmulke, and I refused to do so because I thought that it's important that we as frum people are proud of our identity, and in fact that 99.9% of us are really amazing. The second fact, which I want you to know, which I think is very relevant, and you mentioned some of this in the introduction, about something that people may not be aware of, which is that I was very close to Rabbi Aryeh Leib Shteiman, and whenever I had a shaila on a klal issue, because people always ask me, how do you decide klal issues? The answer is that either I would travel to Eretz Yisrael and speak with him myself, or I would ask one of his gabbayim to ask him a shaila. And a fascinating story that many people are just not aware of because I just didn't have the occasion to discuss this publicly, but I'm happy to discuss it now to your hundreds of thousands of listeners, and that is that when I was first thinking of whether I should run for office or not 10 years ago, and I went to my Rav said, look, that's a klal shaila. I'm not a Rav for the klal. Why don't you go to Eretz Yisrael and ask the Managadar, which in the Litvisher community everyone agrees at the time was Rabbi Leib Shteiman. And so I went to Eretz Yisrael and I went to Bnei Brak and I sat with him. And what's incredible is that when I was speaking with him, we probably spoke for an hour, which anyone who knows who's been to Reb Shteiman is a significant amount of time, right? And he was asking me all sorts of questions on whether I should run or shouldn't run. In the end, he said, look, you should run. He said, but I just want to give you some very important guidance. And I said, sure. He said, the job of an elected official is not to make a Kiddush Hashem. And I was a little bit surprised, right? Because, that's what we think it is when we walk in public life, that we should create a Kiddush Hashem. He said, no. He said, people make this mistake. He said, the job of an elected official is to not make a Chilul Hashem. And he said, if you don't make a Chilul Hashem, then you're going to make a Kiddush Hashem. And those words were always very close to my heart. And every time I did something in public office, and sometimes people were quick to respond or quick to judge or quick to issue a statement or a release, I always thought twice, and I asked myself, for Reb Shteiman's guidance, am I doing this correctly or incorrectly? Am I making a Chilul Hashem? And this came from the Manik Hadar, obviously.
What was it? I don't understand. Explain what he's saying.
What he's saying is that people are in such a big rush to try to go out there and promote the positivity that they end up tripping over themselves and embarrassing the community accidentally because they're rushing to respond, right? And so his point was act ethically, and if you act ethically and you act morally and if you follow halacha and you don't make a Chilul Hashem, then by your very atzmus you will be making a Kiddush Hashem. And that was really the argument that he was making, and that was his point, and that was the guidance that I took. And so what I want to just focus on in the bigger picture is for folks to understand what kind of implications they have. A few years ago, when I was an elected official, I have a friend of mine who I went to law school with who works in the Justice Department. And he comes from New York from time to time, and we have lunch from time to time. And we had lunch, and he told me, he said, David, I just want to tell you, he said, the Justice Department is paying attention to your community. I said, what do you mean, my community? He said, your community. I said, what are you talking about? He said, look, he said, there's been a lot of scandals in the community, and there's been a lot of issues, and there's been a lot of allegations of wrongdoing, and they've been splashed in the press, and therefore the Justice Department is paying attention. Now, you'll say, well, that's unfair. It may be unfair, and it may be biased, quite frankly, but when you are the United States Justice Department and you can focus on anything, when they start seeing trends where they open up the papers, what happens is, and I can tell you this as a public official, I can tell you this as somebody who's currently an adjunct law professor at Brooklyn Law School, someone who's a lawyer who's worked on all sides of government, they follow the trends. And so what happens is one prosecution and one splashy front page leads to another prosecution and another splashy front page. So that's the first thing, which is that on a criminal justice perspective, if you ask any prosecutor honestly, they chase the news. And so when something is in the front page, and I want to be clear, I'm not referring to anything in particular now because I don't want anyone to think that I'm talking about one case. It's a general overall issue. When something is splashed in the front page of the newspaper, people notice it, and the Justice Department notice it, the prosecutors notice it, they start chasing the community as well, up hurting the community in ways that you can't even fathom, which is that even if someone does something relatively innocuous, which happens sometimes, that person may end up getting caught up in the bigger scheme of things simply because there's a renewed focus on the community. So that's one piece of it. The second piece of it was a story that I told. It's one tells you the Justice Department is looking at things. It's another thing when you're actually in the room. I was in the room with around 10 different government officials, and as you pointed out, I was the chair of the Land Use Committee, which means that I had the final say on all zoning and land use issues in New York City. If you wanted to build a big building, you needed my permission, but that was done as part of a group, and normally when it was a complicated issue, we had folks from different agencies. And when I sat in a meeting in a government agency, and we were talking about a very big project that was coming down the pike, multiple projects, one of the projects came up. One of the people in the room, who was a government official, said, look, we have to really take an extra look at this project. And I said, why? And I said, well, because it's those people. And I said, what do you mean those people? And then it occurred to me, those people were my people, right? He was referring to the from community, that the developer was a from developer, and the implication was that you can't trust from people because of the scandals that were involved. That has a real-life impact. Now, in that case, I stepped up and said, come on, I'm also part of that community. And he said, no, not you, of course, right? With my yarmulke and beard. It's not you, it's just them. But it's slipped, but that's very indicative of what actually happens. And then finally, I would say, in the professional world, the reality is that if you are a professional, or if you do business, or if you're a lawyer, doctor, or an accountant, or even work in a school, the reality is that the secular media does not understand, and the secular individual does not understand the Orthodox community. So if their only exposure to the Orthodox community has to do with reading about you in the paper, they assume things about the community, which goes back to my original point. And that harms your business opportunities. It harms your opportunities for advancement. It harms, quite frankly, government funding for organizations. And so all of this has an impact. So think about what's happening. This 0.01% of the population who are engaging in corruption and who really have no remorse at all and are engaging in massive chil Hashem, they're rooting it for the other 99.99% of the community who are from and working hard and who are honest, and they're not getting their fair piece of the pie because of that very small percentage of people who don't care, and because of the very small percentage of people who decide, well, we're going to let them get shishi and we're going to honor them at our dinners simply because they're going to write us a fat check.
So David, why do you think then that organizations like the Agudah, which if you look at its website, it says that it's the spokes, they're the voice of Orthodox Jewry, why don't they take a stand and say anything?
I think what happens is that there are a lot of issues that are considered to be hot-button issues that people shy away from because there isn't necessarily consensus, and they're also afraid to embarrass some people, right? And so the answer is that leadership's not easy, and I'm a case in point. I'm someone who throughout my lifetime, when I've done what I believe and my Rabbanim believe has been the right thing, is there's always a vocal minority who's going to criticize you. And even right now, the fact that you and I are having this conversation, I'm being criticized. And the fact is that after this conversation airs, I'm going to get criticism and you're going to get criticism, and you know that. And so what tends to happen is every organization, they tend to shy away from criticism and they tend to focus on consensus. And I think that's the problem, and that's part of what we want to discuss. And in fact, if you watch the entire video of the remarks, which are available on the Agudah's website, you'll see at one point when I came under harsh criticism from some of the panelists who said, how dare you, who are you, you can't play God. And I said 2 points. First is, the whole purpose of the Agudah Convention is to get the greatest minds in the world, bring them in a room once a year and have an honest conversation about the community. So don't criticize me for having an honest conversation about the community. But the second made is that there is a double standard in the community, which is that, I'm very fortunate to live in a wonderful neighborhood in Flatbush, and I have to tell you, it's a great neighborhood, and I really have lived there my whole life, and it's wonderful. There is a sign on many shuls that says, if you are carrying, please do not daven in our shul. We don't want you to carry something in our shul. And this is a long, great debate that people can get into. I happen to not use the Erev, but my point is that there happen to be a lot of Rabbanim who feel so strongly about the fact want you to carry because of the machlokes of whether the Erev, which exists in Flatbush or not, whether it's a kosher Erev or not, they will say don't daven in our shul. Obviously, it's a kal v'chomer. If you drive to shul and park in front of shul and you're for Rabbis and come in and say, here's 10 grand, give me shishi, certainly they would throw you out of shul. But if you're a child molester, or if you stole money, or you're a Goslin, or you created a Chil Hashem, why are we allowing you to be honored and get shishi in our shuls? And that's my point of the hypocrisy, and it's a conversation that we have to have honestly. And if we can't have it on a global communal level because the people are nervous about having the conversation, let's have it individually. And the fact literally hundreds of people have come to me and told me, I've spoken about this, I agree, I disagree, are we right, are we wrong? That's a good thing. We need to start this conversation so that maybe the next time someone says, hey, let's honor this guy because you know what, he'll give us $250,000 because he engaged in a fraud and he wants to clean his name, that we should not engage in reputation laundering where for a few bucks we'll launder someone's reputation just to make him look better and consequently engage in a massive chil Hashem that embarrasses the entire community.
So here's what I just want to say. You say that one of the questions that people ask me is how could we, a community, come out with standards if you can't play God? And I don't know, don't we play God like
we do?
If a woman is dressed inappropriately, a guy came to me and he said he davened in a shul in Flatbush where one of the women didn't cover her knees. I don't remember what the issue was, and the Rav asked her not to come back. But a child molester, well-known child molester from that basically destroyed the whole entire Mossad, was allowed to daven in that shul, and nobody said anything. So a child molester is allowed to. So, but why are they not afraid to speak up about things like tznius, but they are afraid to speak up about things like theft, chil Hashem, that are much more injurious to our community?
I think a lot of it has to do with money. Unfortunately, what ends up happening is that some people who steal money, they still have money left over. And so a lot of Rabbanim and Gabbayim are afraid to get into fights with these people because they have resources, and the resource is really what it's about. Right? So think about it. That very same Rav who has a sign in the shul that says, please do not daven in my shul if you carry to shul. It's not acceptable, right? That Rav, in many cases, will not go over to somebody who is a convicted felon who was splashed on the front page of the Wall Street Journal and say, please don't daven in my shul either because your kind of behavior is not appropriate, because that person has money and connections and resources. And that's really the issue. The issue is that we have to make a judgment as a community which says that some things are more important than money, which is our values, our reputations, our halacha, our Torah, and those are more important things. And I hate to say this, but I suspect that woman who was asked to leave because her skirt was too short or her sheitel was too short, she probably was not very wealthy, right? And so unfortunately there tends to be two standards. One is for people who are quote-unquote connected and who have resources, and others for the average guy. And I think the average guy is incensed by that. I believe and I know that the silent majority is with me. I'll tell you an astounding fact. You may not be able to hear it from the video. I got the only applause during the entire convention, during the panels, came when I made my remarks, which I said, throw these bums out of shul. People in the crowd applauded. People agree with me. It's just that the realities of the decentralization of our community, which means that we have 1,000 shuls and hundreds of yeshivas, and we have fundraisers who are desperate, and they make decisions that go against Torah and halacha and our values, and they don't realize, and that's what I'm trying to point out to them, is that when they do that, they're doing untold damage to our community. They're hurting us, and they're hurting our people who, everybody from the person who's learning in Cherlow, who's going to have challenges right now because the government's going to say, what kind of behavior is this, and we have to regulate you more than anybody else, to the professional who's going to work in Manhattan, to the persons who are applying to a loan from the bank. They have discretion as to who they give loans to and who they don't, and they certainly have bias towards folks in the community as well, and people don't understand the unintended consequences. And so I'm not even convinced that even if an organization said don't do this anymore, that it would necessarily work, because we need to change the conversation in our community, that we start realizing that people are comfortable saying that's wrong. And if all we've done in our conversation here today, and the conversation that I started at the Agudah Convention last week, is that the next time someone's about to get an aliyah in shul, or even after he gets an aliyah, that a few people come over and say, excuse me, Mr. Gabe, but that was wrong. Why are you giving him an aliyah? And they may not win, but they're debating the issue. At least we've made progress that we're talking about it, which is the elephant in the room that makes people uncomfortable. But people are going to say, who am I to fight it? And the answer is, if Dovid Lichtenstein, who's one of the most successful from business people in the world, can say that this is wrong, and David Greenfield, who runs the largest community charity in America, can say this is wrong, and leaders like me and you can start talking about it, we can give the impetus and the protection and the backing so that the regular person who knows it's wrong and who's upset about it can speak up and say, you know what, I'm not the only one who knows it's wrong. There are community leaders who back me up, and that's what we're trying to do here today.
So one last thing. Do you think that when a child is in shul, and sometimes it's even the child in us, and I was at a chasana in Florida a year ago, and my son looks at me and he says to me, what do you have to do to get thrown out of an Orthodox shul? And I said, what do you mean? He said, look, sitting by Mizrach was a guy, a Ponzi schemer, who had been all plastered over the entire New York area, sitting by Mizrach, Mishakeling Bislavas. He said, at what point, when people see people like this sitting in Mizrach, does it damage your average person's, does it damage their belief in Rabbanim? Does it say, how could the Rav allow this? Like, does it damage their position, their belief in Vasisa Yasher V'Hatayv, Anu Biarta Mikirbecha? Does it damage the Ikrei Hadas of your average child and maybe some adults who have a child still alive in them?
You're 100% right. You know, I have occasion to work with a lot of people in the community that do Kiruv and children at risk, and we do a lot of that work around the work that we do at Met Council, because we're the largest Jewish tzedakah in New York. We serve 225,000 people through 10 different divisions, and we come across every demographic in every community, and we take a very unique approach as we serve everybody, right? I don't care if you're from, if you're not from. I don't care what your community you come from. If you're Bukharian, Hasidish, Russian, you need help, we're going to help you. So when you do that, you get to see the entire extent of the community. The number one thing that people will tell you, especially those people who go off the derech, is it's the hypocrisy that kills them. That's what it is. And you just hit the nail on the head. It's the hypocrisy, right? On the one hand, the Rav is getting up there and he's darshaning and he says that you have to daven with kavana and you have to make sure that you really give your meiser tzedakah and you have to make sure that when you treat someone, you treat him with respect and you have to be yasher. And then you turn around and who's sitting right next to the Rav? This guy who's either the child molester, but the child molester is a quote-unquote rabbi, so we can't throw or the Ponzi schemer, but his name is on the paraychas, so we can't throw him out of shul, or the guy who is engaged in horrible, unethical behavior who is splashed all around the newspapers, but we're afraid of him, so we throw him out of shul. And that is the message that gets sent. It's not a consistent message. And it frustrates the average person, but it also hurts the next generation in ways that, quite frankly, we can't even measure. Because think about the message that you're sending. The message isn't just, so look, some people unfortunately are going to go off the derech, but there's an even worse message, which is that the message to people is you can't make it straight, which is really horrible, right? Because the truth is that most of our successful leaders and most of our successful business people and most of our successful rabbanim, they're straight and they're honest. It's just a handful of people who are impugning the reputation of the community, and that's what makes me so upset. If, in fact, it was 50% of the community who was engaged in this, I would say, okay, what am I going to do? David, look, we have a community. But it's not true. 99+% of our community are honest and straight people, and their reputation is getting ruined by a handful of people who are working in concert with a handful of Gabayim and Rabbanim and fundraisers who are literally, essentially engaging in reputation laundering where for a few bucks they're improving their reputation. And that hurts, and that message that you're sending to that young man or woman or child is, if you work hard and you're honest, that's not good enough because we're not going to respect you. But if you steal money or engage in fraud, we're going to come around you. And I want to be clear, and I've made this point before. It's one thing when there's an allegation and the allegations are in dispute, and certainly it's fair to defend those kinds of people. But when you have a situation where someone is guilty, and everyone knows they're guilty, and they're convicted and they're guilty, and all the facts have come out in the public, and that person engaged in a Chil Hashem, that doesn't make sense. Why are we protecting and defending those people? That's David, what I'm talking about.
David, let me read some of the comments from your Vasas Nayas after this was up. So here's a comment. And David, and I don't say it to you because I'm speaking to myself too, because I'm ultimately, and David Greenfield never did an Aveira in his life, so he sounds so innocent and pure that he should be screaming about, this is the comeback. What's the response to that?
Yeah, the answer is I'm sure I've done Averas. We've all done Averas, right? I think there's the famous comment, there are no tzaddikim who have not sinned. Everybody knows that. The point, however, is that we have not, myself and yourself, we have not, Baruch Hashem, engaged in activities that objectively people will agree are Chil Hashem. And we work very hard, and I know this, and I know your reputation because, as you know, I know a lot of people in the real estate industry. As somebody who's a professor of zoning at land use at Brooklyn Law School and as the former chair, you have a reputation as being honest and ethical, and I have a reputation of being honest and ethical, and there's a reason why we are both sought out. You're sought out in the business world. I'm sought out in the government and political world, where people come to us and they want our advice and counsel and relationships because they trust us, and we're fundamentally honest, and we engage in ethical and honest activities. Does that necessarily mean that I never missed a mincha in my life? Of course I've missed a mincha minyan in my life. Certainly that's the case. But that's not what we're discussing over here. We're not talking about throwing a guy out of shul because he missed a mincha minyan, or even a guy who got into trouble because he misstated his income on his taxes. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about people who have engaged in massive fraud and corruption and chil Hashem, and they've been splashed over the newspaper and the media. And by the way, this comes back to your original question about Reb Steinman. That was the point that Reb Steinman was making to me, which is, don't be so worried about making a kiddush Hashem. Make sure to live your life in a way that, as a public figure, that when you're doing things and you're passing laws and putting out statements and you're engaged with people, make sure that as a public figure you don't make a chil Hashem. And that's really what I try to do every day, which is to make sure I'm not making a chil Hashem. And then, Derek Agav, you will make a kiddush Hashem, and people will hear you and they'll respect you and they'll admire you. So the idea for people to try to compare the fact that I may miss a mincha minyan once in a while with somebody who was splashed on the front page of the newspapers because they were engaged in a Ponzi scheme where they stole $10,000 from our community just shows you that, unfortunately, people just don't understand the conversation that we are engaged in, and they're either delusional or, unfortunately, they just haven't had the wherewithal to really understand the impact that we're discussing. And so it's easy to make anonymous comments on the Internet, but the reality is that this has real-life consequences. And I'll share with you another fact, which is that I have a friend of mine who applied for a very senior job in the government, and Baruch Hashem, he got it. And he told me afterwards privately that his background investigation took twice as long as anybody else's. And once he got into this government position, when he asked the people, why is it that my background investigation took twice as long as everyone else, no one would answer him except one guy who became friendly with down the road said, look, between me and you, he said, because you were an Orthodox Jewish guy. And we don't trust the community. And when we're doing a background check, we have to be extra thorough. That's the reputation that we have. Instead of talking about the chesed, instead of talking about the Hatzalah who helps people, or Chaverim, or the Mises organization, the reputation that we have today in Gulf in America is that people in the community are corrupt. That's the worst kind of thing. And I'll leave you with the final story that I actually read from Reb Shimon Schwab, where when people came to him and said, look, there's a major community leader, and he's a big Oskin, and he's a big philanthropist, and the story's actually written down, you can read it, and they said, can you do us a favor, please? Can you intercede on his behalf with the authorities because he got arrested and he's going to jail? And Reb Shimon Schwab, according to the story, was visibly agitated and is written down and said, look, do me a favor, go back to this person and ask him when he next appears in court to please shave his beard and take off his yarmulke, because not only is it Chil Hashem, what he's doing to the community is he's mamish a roidef, and he's hurting the whole community. And Nebuch, how far have we come since then that these people are now being celebrated in our community as quote-unquote leaders and honorees? I think it's time to have a course correction. It's time to have that conversation. And it goes back to my original point, which is the incredible advancement of technology. We couldn't have had this conversation 20 years ago, because 20 years ago there was no Internet, there was no Twitter, there was no Facebook, there was no Snapchat. There were no podcasts like this, which is listened to by hundreds of thousands of people. We're now able to spread information and have conversations and debates like nobody before. And I'm hoping that this conversation will do exactly what Reb Steinman told me to do, which is prevent the next Chil Hashem.
Thank you very much, David. Honor to have you on with us.
The privilege and honor. Thank you, Reb Dovid, for all that you do. Tiskel mitzvahs.
Take care. Bye-bye. We have the honor of having with us on the phone from Eretz Yisroel, Rav Yuval Cherlow. He's Rosh Yeshiva of Amit. It's one of the Hesder Yeshivas. He's also in Eretz Yisrael, regarded and head of one of the ethical committees in Israel. Welcome, Rabbi Cherlow.
Thank you very much, and hello. Shalom.
So, Rabbi Cherlow, here's the question. Here in America, we've experienced recently a number of very public, sorts of Chil Hashem, where we've had, I shouldn't say Shomrei Torah, religious-looking people who certainly, dressed the part, appearing in newspapers again and again with all kinds of salubrious and distasteful type of scandals. So the question is, should shuls, communities, should they have guidelines for members? Like if somebody was in the paper, a month ago, stealing $20 million, should he be buying shlishi on Simchas Torah? Or should he be buying Master Yaina? Should we be giving them aliyas? Should we be ostracizing people? And we would have to go into what type of issues for moral or ethical things. Or should we say, listen, it's between him and Hashem. You know what I mean? Only the Borei Olam could judge other people. Should we say maybe he did tshuva? I mean, that's, I think, a weaker argument because ben adam l'chavera, you would have to prove of tshuva. But should our response be more proactive and aggressive and say, when a child sees an Avarian get an aliyah, he basically says, oh, I guess money makes you look away from everything, or popularity, or whatever tool it may be. Or should we look about it and say, no, we have to be a forgiving community and let it be between the Rabbi Yisroel is ultimately going to be maimed everybody bedin. What's your opinion?
My opinion is very clear. I can't understand the position that says that it's not our business, and as a congregation, a community, we can ignore the fact that something not ethical and not moral happened and continue and do things like nothing happened. I think that the prophets were very clear. Again and again, they said, don't sacrifice if your hands are dirty. Don't fast if you are not releasing the slaves. And
why don't you, Rabbi Cherlow, say the psukim in Hebrew? Everybody in our oil.
Okay. So yeah. I'm quoting Yeshayahu Aleph.
למה
לי רוב זבחיכם יאמר השם כי תבואו לראות פניי.
But hello, that's Yomar Hashem.
Yeah, he said למה לי רוב זבחיכם.
So the argument against this, Rabbi Cherlow, and I'm not taking positions here, but I have to present both sides. Is people say when the Rabbeinu Shalom says to you, that's fine, but I don't want Reb Zalman saying it to you, or Reb Mechel saying it's not your business, it's God's business. That's the argument.
No, we are mixing two different questions. One question is to know the facts, and that I'm not. If it's only Reb Zalman or Reb Moshe says. And
no, I don't mean that. Let's assume the facts are been in the papers, and somebody says, listen, I don't want you, Mr. So-and-so, or Mrs. in my shul, this is Rabbi Rizal. So she'll say, listen, Yomar Hashem, that's God to say, it's not your position.
He said
to say
it.
That.
That's exactly what I'm saying. He said, God said to us that he doesn't want us when we come with dirty hands. He doesn't want us when we fast together, but we don't do the right ethical and moral way, and our approach towards other people is a disaster. He said it already. That's exactly what I'm saying. He said it very clearly and in a very explicit way, and that is the following. There is a pyramid, a ladder, and the base should be that the community has principles of ethical behavior, of being moral, of not stealing, and all those kinds of things. And then you are invited into shul. Then you are building the second floor and the third floor towards kedusha, towards kriyat Torah, towards all those things. And I can't understand someone that is arguing that it's not our business. If we are ignoring that, we are participating, we are part of it, because we are saying that as a society, it's not important for God, it's not important that we'll be honest and we'll be with dignity and we'll behave in an appropriate way.
Okay, but just go back. How are you showing that from the pasuk? That's what my question is.
That's exactly that. The Navi said, Yeshayahu said, when you are complaining, למה צמנו ולא ראית, עינינו נפשנו ולא תדע, so Hashem responded, and he said, I didn't listen to what you asked, because הלא זה צום אבחרהו, פתח חרצובות רשע, ועשר אגודות מותה, ושלח רצוצים חופשי, ועניים מרודים תביא בית. It's so clear.
No, but it's Rabbi Shaul, all the prophet is saying, the Navi is saying that the Rabbeinu Shalom does not want the karbanis of a Baal Avera.
Exactly.
But the debate, Rabbi Cherlow, those who debate this will say that's true, and the Baal Aveira's Karbanis will doubtlessly not be accepted by the Rabbeinu Shalom. But are we as humans supposed to be judging who is a Baal Aveira? Were we empowered to decide who is the Baal Aveira? That the Pasuk does not say. The Navi does not say that.
It does. The Pasuk says it very clearly. Uvi'arta hara mikirbecha.
Okay, that's a different Pasuk. You're saying that there's a concept.
No, it's not a different. It's not different. It's the as you said. First of all, these are the principles. And if you are asking, is it our responsibility to do that as a society? Oh, we should leave it only between the person and Hashem. So then I quoted, Uvi'arta mikirbecha. It's part of us. But in every time when we read something that, let's say that Parshat Shavua, what are the complaints of Anshe Shechem? Why does Yaakov Avinu and his sons are punishing all Anshe Shechem? So all the Rishonim said, if it's not only the sin of Hamor and Shechem, it's the sin of the whole society because they accepted such behavior, and you can't say it's not our business. This is,
well, that's true. That's one opinion. That's the opinion of the Rambam. There are many other opinions on that. But
okay,
you're saying that the bottom line is you're saying the pasuk in Devarim, which says Yad Eidim Tia B'Rishayna Yad Kaladam B'Achreinu B'Yarta Ra Mikirbecha, says that we have to. So let me ask you a question. If you're saying it's because of B'Yarta Ra Mikirbecha, right? I mean, I don't know anybody who hasn't done Averis.
That's right. That's right. So
how do we? We're quoting a pasuk B'Yarta Ra Mikirbecha. So does that mean if I know my neighbor went to the wrong movie, or pick any Aveira of garden variety Averis, should I be Mekayim U'B'Yarta Ra Mikirbecha? Like, these are very sort of loose guidelines.
That's right. But I want to emphasize again, I didn't say that if he's been a Mechalel Shabbos or eating not kosher, he should not be invited into shul. I didn't say that. I emphasized that the prophets talked about morality and ethics, and these are the basis. We are all not pure, and we all have, I'll call it small sins or whatever, and we know that. So therefore, we are not chasing out, and we are not, we are not authorized to say, okay, everyone that is not pure and is not a great tzaddik should be out of shul. Okay, but when there is a case where it's a big case, it's announced, it's a chilul Hashem, it's something that it caused damage to the society and to the entire congregation, and it was a very strict, not moral behavior or inappropriate behavior. These are the places that we as a society.
So let me ask you a question.
Cannot include it.
Rabbi Cherlow, let me ask you a question. Let me give you a scenario. A guy went ahead and he stole $1 million, right? And and the community knows about it. He wasn't arrested or anything. He got away with it. Do you feel we should ostracize him?
So here is a very sensitive issue because, as I said, the first step must be known the facts, and we have to be very careful.
The facts are known.
But
facts are known. He stole $100 million and he got away with it. Should he be ostracized?
Yes, I think I think the answer would be yes.
Let me ask you another question then. A guy bribes a public official, right? And it doesn't end up in the papers, but they know he bribed a public official to do anything. Should he be ostracized?
At the end, I'm saying again, I'm very afraid to use "we all know" because we all know.
And let's say we all know. We know. We all know. We all know he ostracized. We all know he bribed the public official. Should be ostracized.
And if we did v'darashta v'chakarta itev, my criteria is very simple. Can you look in the eyes of someone else that is criticizing you and saying, "Okay, it's not a problem. It's okay."
Hello, but if a guy drove on Shabbos, it's the same. You're saying
I said it's you have to distinguish because when he drove on Shabbos and ate not non-kosher food or whatever, this is what I called the second or the third floor, and this is
Ben Adam Lamakim. You're saying
that's right.
Okay, so let's take
a
guy bribed a public official. Does he get whatchamacallit? Should he be ostracized?
Yeah, I think yes. I think that.
Let me ask you something. A person used a vile racial slur. Should he be ostracized?
I didn't understand the question.
Somebody spoke in a racially derogative manner. Should he be ostracized?
So again, if it's one failure, all of us, as you said, we're not sure. But if it's a system, if it's systematic,
it happened one time. It happened one time, and he did that.
So what can I do? Okay, so
but now let me. Good. So Rabbi Yisroel, but I want to follow up. Now the same thing. Another person used a vile speech, and it got caught on video, and it made its way around YouTube, and it was seen by 50 million people, or 100 million, or a billion people, that a guy with a yarmulke is screaming at racial epithets at somebody. Should this person be ostracized?
I don't know, maybe, because...
So my question is, here's the question I'm asking. I'm asking the fact that two people could do the same Avera, right?
Yeah, that's a good question, but it's not connected...
Wait, let me just finish my point. One person is unlucky, and he was caught and arrested and ended up in the papers, and a Chil Hashem. There we say, okay, it's a huge Chil Hashem, he should be ostracized. The other person did the same Avera. It was done, it didn't make it into the papers. He wasn't arrested. We say he shouldn't. So why should his lack of luck that he was caught now make it an ostracizable event?
Okay, so this is a completely different question. It's not connected to what we are discussing now. You can say two persons took a rifle and shoot it, and one missed, and one, did it.
I don't think that's comparable. I don't think that's comparable. At the end of the day, one committed a crime and one didn't.
Yeah,
one killed somebody and one didn't.
Again, so you can say the same thing here. I mean, this is a complete different question, and that is, what is the connection between your motivation and your wish and your plans and the consequences and the results? So I can deal with this issue in general, not only in what we are talking about. The public punishment that we're talking about now. It's a great question, and according to halacha, you do consider also the consequences and the results, and not only asking what did he mean to do or what was his motivation, and it's in every aspect of halacha. So also here, I will say, two people did the same thing. I mean, meaning, the same motivation, spoke the same things. One was quoted in film, and one was nobody knew about it. So we have to consider also the results, not only the motivation and the scene.
It's just an interesting point that the same action could have much graver consequences through no desire of this person. He was just an unlucky person, and because of that, he would be ostracized vis-a-vis the other one who did the same vile act, but wasn't caught.
Yeah, but this is the system in every act we are doing. It's not connected only to the sugya that we're talking about it now. This is a great question. Actually, in fact, in this Parashat Shavua, the Meshech Chochmah deals with the idea what Yehuda planned to do and Reuven planned to do to Joseph, and what happened because of that. And the Meir Sifra in our parasha is saying that we have to check not only the motivation but also the consequences. This is the system, and it's a very good week to deal with it. But it's not connected to what we are speaking about, because we are speaking about the responsibility of the society to say it's not part of us this kind of behavior. And you're asking now a question, okay, what do we mean when we say behavior? About what he did or what was the consequences? Okay, it's a good question, but I want to emphasize that we as a society cannot tell ourselves it's not our business.
Okay, now, do we have to worry about the repercussions to why you're going to throw this guy out of shul, and his kid is not going to be able to do a shidduch? His lovely 18-year-old girl who goes to Beis Yaakov Seminary or goes to Stern or wherever it may be, is not going to do a shidduch because of something her father did. Do we have to look at the repercussions and the collateral damage it'll create?
I will say the following. First of all, the answer actually is no, because every criminal that does things, actually the price is being paid by his family, his wife, his society, everyone else. And you cannot say because they'll be a tzaddik veralo, we should not do anything. But this is in principle. When you
wait. Respectfully, I just respectfully, Rabbi Cherlow. I don't have a Shulchan Aruch in front of me, but let's say the Mechaber in Shin Lamed Daled discusses whether you could take collateral acts against the children, and I believe it's a Machlokes Achronim. Do we look at the effect it has on the children or not? Right?
As far as I know, nobody will say. No one says. Achronim says that we should consider the consequences and the results of what will happen to the children as an argument of not doing anything to the father. I don't know about it.
That is true.
But let me say the but. The but is that you don't, in those kinds of issues, you don't deal exactly according to the law. You should be sensitive. You should ask to yourself all kinds of things. If it's a big story, then you'll have to say, unfortunately, I must ignore the consequences and the results that will happen to the children. If it's a story that you have to think about, and you can put the family and calculate it and call the Haknesses bekal v'chomer, so you may be more sensitive. It's not working. In those kinds of things, it's not working according, it's not a mathematic integral or whatever. It's something that you have to think about. But we cannot say that because the children or the wife or his parents or his, entire family will pay a huge price, we should be quiet, because don't forget, from the other side, there are victims. And sometimes the victims have the same problem, and their family and everybody was hurt. Sometimes the society is the victim, and so you cannot, if you want to bring everybody to the field, to the Greenfield, so you have to bring also the whole family of the victims. Okay.
So when a scandal reacts, how should we react publicly to the media? Should we downplay it, hide it, play defense? Or should we come out very publicly and say, look, Judaism is a religion. It's not just a social group, but it's a religion. And when you break the laws of the religion, you don't speak for us, and you're not part of our community. Should we be publicly coming out and condemning these type of actions? And should it be done by Rabbanim? Or on the other hand, and if we don't, are we in effect at some way condoning it and become almost the Messiah L'Dvar Avera?
So every case is a different case. But I want to say something about your opening words about Chilul Hashem. I think it's the huge Chilul Hashem is to say that Hashem is interested in His name or His believer's name, and will prefer not dealing with the victims and someone that was hurt. This is the greatest Chilul Hashem, because the Hashem I believe in says the opposite all over the Torah and Chazal or whatever. Ve'elohim yivakesh et nirdaf. And we should say, as a society, we are people, we're human beings, we have failures, we are dealing with them, we are confronting them, we are trying to fix them, we are not ignoring and we're admitting there is a problem, and we're gonna discuss it and find a way to fix it. I think that the Tanakh always does the same thing. I don't know even one place in Tanakh where Hashem is covering something because it's a Chilul Hashem to advertise it. The opposite is the right thing to do, and always on Tanakh and on Chazal, we're facing the truth, and we are trying to fix it and to do tshuva and to have all kinds of gdarim and siyagim for the future, that such a thing will not happen again.
Okay. When we honor people who have recently a very public organization honored somebody who was known, he had an affair, and many people in the audience were knew about it. do you say something like this is private? And therefore, look, why should we be involved in somebody's, he had an affair, it's, I guess his wife was hurt, but, it's not a public type of event? Or do you say it's inappropriate for a public organization to honor somebody like that?
Again, it depends. Depends the situation. Depends how big was the case, and what was his response, and his tshuva publicly and towards the victims. It really depends.
Rabbi Cherlow, thank you very much for your time.
Okay, good night.
All the best. Take care. Bye-bye. We have on the phone with us from Baltimore, Maryland, Rav Weiss, who's the Mara de Asra of Bais Haknesses, HaChaim. Welcome, Reb Tzvi.
Welcome. Thank you for the opportunity, and it's good to talk to you.
So here's the question we'd like to pose to you. When we have somebody who has been a major embarrassment, a source of grief, somebody who's been a machriv hatzibur, right? How do we, post facto, when they're not a danger anymore, they're not a roidif anymore, they are not a predator anymore, they are not, being roidif us either beguf, benefesh, b'mamain, whatever the case may be, but they cause so much embarrassment. How do we deal with them as a tzibur? Is there a concept of l'man yishmu ve'yiro, we should be merachik such a person to show that our community has standards. We've built a beautiful community, and if you want to try to destroy the beautiful community, we don't want you to send a warning out to others. What is the Rav's opinion?
This is, Reb Dovid, this is a complicated, sensitive issue. It's not a shaila from today or the last 50 or 100 years. It's a shaila that has come up throughout our history, hundreds of years, probably thousands of years. I mean, Baruch Hashem, Klal Yisroel, from its initial existence until today, has had multitudes, ruba de ruba, of Yidden who are erlich, did the right thing, created Kiddush Hashem as individuals and as part of a tzibur. But unfortunately, in the world that was, in the world that is, people have free choice, they have free will, they have bechira, there's all kinds of challenges, and there have been those individuals who have behaved in horrific, harmful ways, both to themselves spiritually, to their families, to their communities. There have been chaytel machta, there have been, as you said before, machrive hatzibur, dangers to society, as individuals and as groups. The shilas that go back about this issue when they talk about, the groups of Shapsai Tzvi and so on, who were out there and recruiting and pulling Yidden away from doing the right thing. And it's a complicated shaila. To give one cookie-cutter answer would not work. We're talking here theoretical. Every individual in every case has to be judged on its merits and be looked into with a tremendous amount of all kinds of emotions. Compassion, both for the individual who went off, compassion for the people around him, compassion for the tzibur that is subject to what we just talked about.
Now, Reb Tzvi, let me just to illuminate the tzibur at large why I'm asking you this question.
Mm-hmm.
A while ago, a fellow by the name of Dweck, who caused one of the greatest Chil Hashems, certainly in my lifetime, moved into the Baltimore community where you are a very prominent Rav. And he said, Emani kan hakol kan. He moved in, he registered his children in the local Beis Yaakov. And I understand that, there was some consternation in the community as how to deal with him. And you were very involved, and which is why I put the shaila to your feet, not just, we haven't chosen you out of a hat, but out of somebody who actually had to deal and struggle with this very issue.
Well, look, Reb Dovid, unfortunately, as a Rav in a community, these kinds of issues are going to present themselves, and our responsibility, the way I understand it, and the other Rabbanim in our community, and I'm sure all over the world, understand that we can't run away from these situations, and we have to take them on head first. I don't want to talk about any individual case, but, the case that you mention is a little bit different than the shaila that you posed. When that individual moved or attempted to move to our community from outside the community, at that point he was still deemed to be a danger to the society around him. And therefore it was dealt by the Rabbanim, by the local Rabbanim, from that frame of mind, from that point of consideration that we have over here. You know what you said before, we're not talking about a case of a roidif. We're not talking, his situation was seen very clearly, and a judgment had to be made. Is this a roidif? Is this somebody who was going to enter into our community and start behaving in the ways that he behaved before, without remorse, looking for helpless victims, and going to cause a tremendous amount of tsar, beguf, b'mammon, and b'nefesh? So that's how the approach to that case was taken from that frame of mind. There are other cases of sexual predators where it is almost impossible, from my opinion and from the experts that I've spoken to, for anyone to get up and say, "Oh, that fellow's cured. He's no longer a danger to society." And therefore those cases also have to be looked at from that standpoint. And though the question comes up about the innocent children of the perpetrator, of the predators, his children, we have to look at it from the standpoint of protecting our children, the innocent children who are unrelated to the story. So the case that you bring up, it was a painful case. We dealt with it properly as a group of Rabbanim. We were meyayitz, and we came to a very good conclusion at that point. But again, it's different than the shaila that you're asking.
See, what halachic precedent would you establish for a lot of people? Here are the two arguments. Look, he has to have someplace to daven. We can't stop somebody from davening. Question number one.
Of course we can stop people from davening.
Good. So give us some halachic precedents. Just teach our Olam.
A ton of it, if you open up a Shulchan Aruch, and look, nobody should attempt, this is dangerous, do not attempt it at home, like they say. It's a disclaimer. But we have to get educated. The Shulchan Aruch in Shin Lamed Daled, it's Hilchos Nidui V'Cheirim, and there it's talking about a case where a fellow was put into a nidui because he was an avariya, which means he didn't behave properly. Not necessarily that he enticed others, not that he was a harm or a threat or a predator. We're not talking about sexual predators. Those cases do come up.
Even in Isid Rabbanan.
Within his own Dalet Amis, in the privacy of his own home, he is not following the halacha. So the Tzibur then, I don't know if today they understand it, but the Tzibur then understood that just like we have a responsibility for each other's well-being, Baruch Hashem, the moistus HaChesed that exist in our communities are enormous, are historically precedent-setting moistus, such as in our community here, Ahavas Yisroel, which provides funds and food and clothing for those in need. In New York, of course, you have Taimchei Shabbos and multitudes. Well, there is also a concept of being responsible for the spiritual well-being. And that, we have also, Baruch Hashem, great moistus who deal with that. They're called Kiruv organizations. Right? There's Eisha Torah or Sameach. I don't want to name them because I might leave out so many of them. Well, one of the ways that the Chazal understood it, when other means don't work, when Yemin Mikareves does not work or has not shown fruit, then unfortunately sometimes for the benefit of the avarium, for the benefit of the fellow who is not behaving right. He knows the right thing to do. He's been educated, but he refuses to do the right thing for his benefit to motivate him. Unfortunately, sometimes with small doicha, we have to give a patch. And that patch is called a nidui. It's a chayrim that Bezdin is empowered and obligated to do. In fact, at the end of Shin Lamed, right there in the first Sif in Shin Lamed Daled, the Ramah quotes, and this is where the real discussion starts, Umenadin lemishu chayiv nidui, those who are chayiv nidui, we will put them in that chayrim, which by the way meant they can't come into the shul, you can't be in their Dalet Amis, you can have nothing to do with them, you can't incorporate them into a minyan, even a shaila whether you could daven if you have a minyan while they're there. Right? That's talked about. But it's an absolute, complete smol doicha. Away, sir. You don't belong in our tzibur.
And are you worried that he will maybe it will impact his Yiddishkeit, he'll become less...
That's the Ramah, Reb Dovid. Zok the Ramah, va'afilu yesh lochush, she'al yidei kach yetze letar b'sra. Here you have this fella. So he's an Avarian. He's not keeping a certain halacha that he's supposed to be keeping. We go and we impose this tremendous patch of a nidui. No one's doing business with you. No one's talking to you. You can't come into our shul. We're erecting mechitzas where you go. The guy's going to say, you know what do I need this for? Zayin megazint, I'm leaving. Here's my yarmulke. Here's my black hat, my gray hat, my straw hat. You could have it all. I'm off letar b'sra. So here we are. We're trying to protect you. Think about it now, right? We're trying to protect you that you should do the right thing. And you're threatening, not only threatening, we believe, yesh lochush, there's a real possibility here that you're going to go letar b'sra. Say, I'm sorry, mister, this is what we have to do. If you want to go letar b'sra, that's your decision, even though it's self-defeating, right? Because we put you in a nidui to bring you back, and it's not working, so maybe we should stop. So l'chayr, what you see from here is that the nidui is not only to stop the Avarian from doing his behavior, but it's like what you talked about before, l'man yishmu l'man yiru, that people have to know you need to behave, you need to do the right thing. And we try to do that with guttens. We try to do it by educating people and giving them the beauty and the sweetness of Yiddishkeit and the great affordability and privilege that it is that we are capable of having an intimate relationship with the Rabbi Shalom based on his Torah and mitzvahs. But if that doesn't work, then we have to start thinking about the individual, and we have to start thinking about the people that he might be influencing, even though he's not actively trying to influence anybody, but his mere existence is an influence, and we have to protect the people, even if it means that he'll go off with Harbistra.
And Rabbi Weiss, the preponderance of the poskim hold like the Ramah. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. It's true the Taz of an art argues very strongly on the Ramah.
But the Shach and the Nekudas HaKesef,
the
Chavas Yoyer, etc.
Dovid, you're the Talmud Chacham himself. You don't even need me here. But the Nekudas HaKesef, the Shach over there, who after a whole litany of rayas from the Taz, from Gemaras back and forth, the Nekudas Shach just says, Ein lochush. We don't have to worry about what the Taz is saying. The imloy kain, butla din Yisroel.
Right.
We have to have din Yisroel. This is something. It's our privilege. It's our obligation to have din Yisroel. And there's a Chasam Sofer with a tshuva about it, and there's a Chavas Yoyer, and it's well brought through. And I think
now,
this
Rabbi
is
Weiss,
important for communities to know that we have this obligation. Yeah, go ahead.
What about going to the children and you say, well, somebody's a terrible Avarian, and we're not talking about somebody who did something fine. We're talking about somebody who created a great Chil Hashem, somebody who's a massive predator, somebody who's impacted us in a substantially material way that's a machriv hatzibur. Are we allowed to say, look, we don't want your children in our school, we don't want your wife to come to shul, you are chutz lamachna? Could we go beyond the person?
Well, that's a very interesting question, and it's a question that has been raised hundreds of years ago, and the Chasam Sofer talks mamish about a very similar case, and the Chavas Yoyer about telling the woman of the Machrim that she cannot come into the shul. And it's very interesting what the Chasam Sofer says, and a fascinating thing the Chasam Sofer says, you have to hear the Chasam Sofer just to know how far he goes. He says, what about the children? What about the children? So he says, look, this fellow that we've put into a chayrim, he has, what's keeping him around is that he has some schusim. What are his schusim? Maybe that his children are having a Jewish education. That's a schus that's being told of him, that's keeping him, and why he's not gone and off the scene. And therefore, Dr. Chasam Sofer, maybe that's part of our obligation is to take away his schusim, not let him have his children in school, so they won't get a Jewish education, so they won't bring schusim to him. What about their neshamas? Their neshamas you don't have to worry about. They're innocent. The Rabbi Shalom will look at them as innocent. They're an anusim. They would have done the right thing, but they were never given an opportunity. So their neshamas are protected. You don't have to worry about their neshamas. And Fakert, now his neshama, the Avarian's neshama, will get what it finally deserves. An unbelievable tshuva in the Chasam Sofer, in Yeridea, Simin Shin Chaf Bais. But I do want to tell you that at the end of that, the Chasam Sofer says that Hadava Tzarech Iyun Un Masun, we have to be very patient and we have to look it through, and this has to be done with tremendous trepidance, with tremendous fear, right? V'Hashem yishmereinu, we have to be protected and know what the right thing to do is. So definitely, even when it would come to a question of their children being brought to school, I mean, in our case, we talked about an outsider coming into our community, so it could be told before, don't come to this community because you're not going to be able to get your children into school.
Very much, Rabbi Weiss. We greatly appreciate having you on.
Thank you. It was very nice talking to you. Be well.
Kulta, Bye-bye. Here's the question. Open the news. Unfortunately, we see too many from people in yarmulkes, sometimes, with a beard and payas, etc., being pulled away with handcuffs for doing really things that are against not only the Torah, the Aseres HaDibros. Well, should we as a community be quiet and just turn the other way? Or should we be saying, the Rabbanim, the Gedolim, they should come out and say it's not acceptable to announce it, both to the Umas Olam, announce it to Frayiden, and announce it to our community. It's not acceptable. What you have done is not what a Frami does. You are not part of our community with this behavior. Or should they be silent? Let's hear the opinion of what the Rabbanim have to say. Now here's Hagoyin Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky.
That's correct. Don't say it's not a part of community. It's unfortunately, it penetrated our community also. But we have to try to correct ourselves.
So a public announcement would be something that should be done?
Not specific for somebody, but in general.
Here's her of Mendel Shafran, the great Chassidish Dayan from Bnei Brak.
Why we shouldn't do that? I don't think the Rabbanim have to be mixed into everything that someone does. There's no growth to such things. If you mean Rabbanim that make gitten with Kfar, what about the Yidden that smuggle samim? How do you say samim?
No. We're not talking against. Why don't the Rabbanim come out when somebody comes out and they've done a ma'aseh avel like smuggling samim and it's in the papers? We should come out, Rabbanim, as a community. This person does not represent our community. To come out with a strong voice as opposed to being silent to it, which sort of leads one to believe, like, if we don't come out against it, it's almost like we're being machshared. It's like shtika kaida. Why don't we come out as a voice and say, you smuggled samim, you did this?
I don't think everything has to come out with official signatures and moduas, and you don't find the gvul. The next step will be, why don't Rabbanim come out if somebody doesn't pay taxes the way he's supposed to? And why don't Rabbanim come out if someone builds against the law? And why don't Rabbanim come out? You don't even know where you're going to stop with these things. Everybody knows Rabbanim are against smuggling, and everybody knows Rabbanim are against doing things you're not supposed to do. And if they're asked, they're supposed to answer the right way. Rabbanim that answer Gezer Akim is like this, and it's Chil Hashem or it's Mutter or it's also. These Rabbanim have to understand that they don't know what they're talking about. They're not supposed to talk like that. But to come out and everything, Rabbanim will say what they think. This is also some other sort hashkafa, and everything you have to have Rabbanim to come out and say what they think about it. Of course, in our community, in every community, there's shulayim. Shulayim means how do you say shulayim? At the end. No. Shulayim is the end of the paper. How do you call it?
Okay.
The margin of the paper.
Right.
Call it. There's shulayim in every community, and the shulayim is a small percent. And everybody knows that this shulayim, if somebody's going to kill someone, and some people who kill someone will have to come out with a brief that we're against tzichas and tzichot, and if somebody does things, it's not that everybody have to come out on everything with official things. Dashkofis, everyone knows dashkofis, and every Rav gives you a dashkofis that is against these things, and it spreads out the way it's supposed to be spread out. And you don't know how tomorrow these things are going to be used. You have to.
Okay, very good. He is from Yerushalayim, or of Nissan Kaplan.
I'm not so up to the news who are the people that were in the scandals or not. I know there's a lot of scandals all over the place. But first we have to find out in every scandal exactly, what the person did and what he did and how he did and why he did. And, to take a person out of your community because he did something wrong and you're embarrassing, forget about that the person has to be in jail if he did something wrong and he has to be locked up and he's dangerous and et cetera, and he messed people's life. All of that is no question about it. But for example, he has kids and he has a wife with 10 kids. Now, he had his problem if he's sick or if it's a Yitzhahara. Today, people call the Yitzhahara illness, and he's in jail. And then we say he's not a part of us, and we kill all of his kids that he didn't do nothing wrong.
Well, respectfully, quote Rav, I don't think that we're talking about somebody who necessarily people look. It says like signai, like sachmai, like sinna. These were all given to Yiddish people. We're talking about the people who make these huge chil Hashems that end up in the papers, and we're talking about those who create really.
I'll tell you. Maybe I'm not so aware. I'm myself. I don't have, internet, and I'm really maybe not so exposed. I really see Rabbi and Robin most of the day. I spend time with them. Sometimes also with Rav Huna and Rav Nachman.
Yeah, but Rabbi and Rav Huna talk about
no, I don't know.
The Ramai. They talk about the Ramai all the time.
Yeah, no. I'm not aware exactly. I'm saying. I'm not aware exactly on the kind of people that the Rav is really mentioning, so it's hard for me to apply. I'm just explaining. A lot of time people do disgusting things that cause a lot of chil Hashem, really a lot of chil Hashem. And it's terrible, yeah? But they have a family behind him, and the family, his wife didn't do nothing wrong because she married him, yeah?
It's true, but
I'm not speaking when she stood behind him and she helped him. He has 5 kids.
But Knesses Yisroel also did nothing wrong, and I tell you that boys become fry when they say, "Look, somebody did this." Wow, and he's all. But if Gedolim or the Tzibur came out and they say this is wrong, so then we have to. Don't we have to worry about the rest of Pal Yisrael too?
I don't. I'm saying we have to down legufay shel davar. We have to down legufay shel davar. You understand? I don't know exactly the case, but every time the person that did wrong has to be in jail, has to be closed down. But as a family, as a dominant effect as well, and we have to know when we would decide to take someone out, what means is out, so his kids can never get married.
You're saying that the Tshuvas Haradvav says al Gedolim hador liyes mosin b'davar zeh v'liden al kol adam yechidi. I think it's the lashon of the Tshuvas Haradvav.
Exactly what I mean. With all the pain that it is and all of the life of people that are destroyed. We have a Gemara in Makis, the Zayin of Mudalas, at the end of the first parak of Maya. Bezdin she'reges achas l'shivim shona mikis Kaplan. And the Katlanis, I'm sorry, Katlanis. But the question is, I don't understand. The person is a more Reitzeach. We need to get rid of these people, and we have different Gemaras that they put people in kippah just in the Chayim.
Yeah.
But we see that Mitzav Sheni, the Gemara says how careful we have to be when we punish a person.
Yeah.
I heard once from Rav Moshe Feinstein, our God Ladol, right? I think all of us are under the umbrella of Rav Moshe Feinstein. And Rav Moshe said the following thought. Again, I don't remember the pasuk, but the thought I remember very clearly. He said, the goyim also kill. If someone kills, they kill him. And we also kill if someone kills, right? We have the halachas as a punishment. Today, actually, the world doesn't kill so much. We also don't kill so much. But the halacha is really if someone kills, he has to be dead. In our generation, the world, I think only 7 states in America, have yet punishment of death. But he said, what is the difference? He says, by us, by them, they punish because we want people to know that it's so bad to do it. And maybe we had a mistake and we killed the wrong person, but what we could do, we have to make the people to understand that it's terrible to kill. By us, how much it's important for us to give that message over. And at the same time, we're so scared to kill a person that doesn't deserve to be killed.
Yeah.
And this is the pshat in the Gemara in Makis. So the choite is, how much is Kevan Shechota Yisroel? we try every time that the person will not get punished if he doesn't have to get punished, if his kids don't have to get punished. We want in one hand to be very strict, but in one hand at the same time to protect the person that doesn't deserve to get what he doesn't have to deserve to get.
Okay. And here is the last question we will be asking from this fabulous panel of Rabbanim. Let's go to the chosen winner of this week's riddle.
Hello, Dovid. Enjoying your show. As always, about your riddle about how is Yosef able to allow to go and see his nefesh for Kibbutz. So the Lubavitcher Rebbe in Likutei Sichos, Chelik Lamed Hey, discusses it. And the Kitzer, he brings the Ketz Mishnah and the Rambam, he said the Atayde Perekei, Halacha Dalet. And over there the Ketz Mishnah says that number one is Ram Vishleim hold that you're allowed to be Yaver Val Yerek. I mean, even you're allowed to go on with his nefesh. And then he brings, because Mitch brings in Muki Yosef, that even according to the Rambam, that you're not allowed to be Aver if it's not one of the three mitzvahs, to try Yerek Val Yaver. So to quote the Ketz Mishnah, the Ketz Mishnah says, "Im hu adam gadol v'chassid Yerushalayim v'roish hador parish b'kach v'shoy v'karitz Hashem v'lim ta'asma afilu ha'mitzvah kala k'dei sheyiru om v'lomdu v'yiras Hashem u'la'avei v'chol libo." So Yosef saw that the door, which was the Bnei Yaakov, were parish and Kibbutz. Number one, Reuven was Bilbo Yisroel Yoviv. And Shimon V'Levi were Achartem Eisi, Ladisheni, Yaakov said. And most of all, the Rebbe brings from the Pasuk of Vayiru Echav, Ki Eisi Avaviyam, Kol Echav, Kol Banav. And because of that, Vayiru Vayisnu Eisi. So the hatred for Yosef was because the father loved him. That itself was a Pegia in Kibbutz. And the biggest Pegia, and it was all of them, the whole door at that time. In the Mela, even according to the Rambam, or according to the Yeshiva, according to Ketz Mishnah, Yosef would be allowed to have Kiddush Hashem, that the Yiro is a Vilundam Imenu to be Meis Nefesh, and that's why he did it. And there's a lot of sightings on the side that I've explained. One of them is that part of the shlichus that Yaakov sent him was the Hashiveni Dovid. If they kill him, he's not even able to do the shlichus altogether. But the point was not keep it off so much as it was Kiddush Hashem, that they should learn from him that it'd be Meis Nefesh for keep it off. Anyway, Shukad Hatzlachen, Yeres HaKodesh, und sei gesund.